Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our first roundtable of 2024. We're hosting this subject area today following a poll on LinkedIn where 40% of the product community voted for how to become a product-led company. My name is Jen and I'm Associate Director here at Intelligent People. And if you don't know us, we are a specialist product recruitment agency with close to 20 years experience recruiting product talent up to board level. We provide permanent and interim services, both contingency and executive search. Roles include product operations, product design, and product management up to CPO level. Please go to our website to see our current live roles. I'm co-hosting today with my colleague Doug Bates. We've broken the talk into 3 sections, and we have an expert speaker on each one. So I'd like to introduce and welcome Amitav Ghatak. Amitav is the Chief Product Officer at Dojo. Amitav will be talking through the understanding around the product-led approach, and then followed by Anna Jakimovska. Anna is the Chief Executive Officer of Culture Trip, and Anna will discuss how to build and implement a product-led culture. And then finally, Moises Garcia. Moises is previously Chief Product Officer at Carwell, and Moises will talk through some of the challenges and strategies in the product-led approach. Over to you, Doug.
Thanks, Jen. So I'll be covering understanding the product-led approach with Amitav. Now, there'll be a graphic coming up on the screen shortly. And to kick off, we'd like to give a quick summary of what we mean by a product-led approach, which often gets confused with product-led growth or PLG. A product-led approach means the organization is product-centric in its approach, whereas PLG is a go-to-market strategy. If you can see the graphic, you'll see that with a product-led approach, the product itself sits at the heart of the business. Some of the key points that define a company with a product-led approach are: it's a holistic strategy affecting and influencing all areas of the business. The primary focus is building products that deliver value and an excellent customer experience. There is a culture of product innovation, user experience, and customer feedback across the organization. And the entire customer journey is built around the product. Some good examples of businesses that have got a product-led approach are Google, Apple, Tesla, Airbnb, and of course Dojo, which brings us nicely into introducing our first guest, Amitav Ghatak, the CPO Dojo. Hi Amitav, thanks for joining us.
Hey Doug, happy to be here.
Would you like to give us a quick introduction before we start off?
Sure, yeah. I think throughout my career, done various product and engineering leadership roles, over 20 years, gray hair and all of that. Couple of startups that actually got acquired, scale-ups like Dojo, which is probably one of the largest fintechs in the UK today, and enterprises like William Hill, where I ran the mobile division. I just love being on the cutting edge of innovation through technology, and really happy to share some thoughts and experiences.
Oh, thank you. Well, if we look at understanding the product-led approach, which is our little subject then, I think we've got 5 key points that we'd like to cover. So could you define what it means to be product-led?
Isn't that the $1 million question? I think you summarized really well. I look at it, at a product-led business as a company that makes its products the vehicle for acquiring and retaining customers and driving growth and influencing the organization. As you mentioned, it's a holistic strategy that doesn't just cover the acquisition and retention side of things, but also at the beginning, the awareness side of things, and at the end, in terms of the advocacy side of things. As you also mentioned, it's like organization-wide, so not just the product, data, and engineering teams or sales, marketing, support teams, but looking at far more across the board and product being the center part of it. Some companies, I think, are product-led without knowing it, and some companies believe that they're product-led without, but actually not. And the reality is, it's not trivial to make that transition. I think in terms of the important pieces of it, of course, the mission, vision, product strategy, metrics, and OKRs, and actually the execution of these initiatives are critical parts to a product-led strategy. And I think Anna and Moises will talk more about that in the coming sessions.
What would you say the key principles are then of a product-led approach? And I mean, could you share some success stories, do you think?
Sure. I mean, there are many definitions of it. I look at it as a few key pillars, right? First one being, I think, deep customer empathy, right? I have this theory that with enough time and money, you can solve any problem in the world. I find that great companies focus a lot on the problem statement and the pain points of their prospective customers or their existing customers. It's also about collecting a lot of feedback, both qualitative and quantitative. And finally, kind of the culmination of it, which is much more around the kind of intuitive design and amazing experience. I mean, we can talk about Apple and Amazon, who do it amazingly well, but I'll give an example of Airbnb. We actually did this exercise a few times at Dojo, which is the Airbnb 11-star exercise, right? So we all know what a 5-star hotel looks like and kind of the experiences that that exist. What Airbnb and some of their strategy sessions, they challenge you to kind of really think about what an 11-star experience looks like. Yeah, maybe, you get a private jet and, it's flown by Tom Cruise, and you get welcomed with a bottle of, champagne and things like that. What does that 11-star experience look like? And then you work backwards into thinking about, hey, what is the solution I can create based on the constraints available within the company? But it's very important to kind of think about that end game. The second thing I think is around kind of self-service and how much is the customer truly being an advocate for your product and kind of consuming more and more pieces of your product. And that's where sales, marketing, support, how much is the product contributing to their life, right? The standard kind of cross-sell, upsell, demos, trials, support structures. Zoom, Notion, these are great examples of where self-service really kicks in. Zoom is interesting. You get the 40-minute Zoom call, but actually both parties have to have Zoom. So if I'm kind of inviting you to a Zoom call, then automatically, the second person needs to have it. Third pillar, I would say, is around kind of the data-driven decision-making side of things. Obviously, qualitative, quantitative, to understand and make decisions. Don't get me wrong, gut feel is a very important part of a product manager's armory, but if you don't layer on that data side of things, you're pretty much flying blind, right? That said, you have to be careful of vanity metrics, and I've seen some really crappy OKRs, to be honest, that don't kind of focus on outcomes, much more around outputs. A great example would be Netflix. Back in 2006, they instituted a $1 million prize around who could improve their DVD recommendations by 10%. And there were teams all over the world that just, continuously trying to improve that algorithm. And they believe that improvement in that algorithm could mean, more customers, more revenues, et cetera, et cetera. And the fourth and probably the hardest part of it is around the cross-functional team collaboration, right? Again, all of these functions kind of working together to make an amazing experience. We've heard the Spotify stories, their kind of tribes and squads model and things like that. But I'd give actually Dojo as an example of how that works really well. We've embedded kind of sales, operations, marketing people within our tribes. So it's a constant two-way dialogue. And you're actually building the right proposition for the right type of customers. I think finally, just to give an overall experience of what a product-led experience can look like, I'll give the example of Tesla. My brother actually was one of the first people to buy a Tesla Model S, right? That's back in 2012. And I happened to be in California at that time, and said, "Oh, we got to go pick it up." And they said, "You got to come for an hour. It'll take about an hour, and you can bring up to 2 people." Okay, fine, fantastic. So we went to the Tesla factory in Fremont, and that time I think they were maybe making a few thousand cars, and it had nothing to do with the car pickup. It was a factory tour where every single piece of how the car is actually being manufactured, they tell you why it's so amazing and why it's the Tesla is just so much better than any other car. The whole process, and I'm not even a customer now. I'm being cross-sold on a Tesla as well.
Yeah.
So that's where all of these experiences are kind of merging together. And the actual car pickup, oh, there's your car, go take it. Right. So that is already in your app and things like that. Oh, you install the app, etc., and you just walk away. And that I found to be a truly amazing product-led experience. It's quite fascinating, actually.
Yeah, I've not got a Tesla, so but yeah, that sounds good. And it's using the customers to advocate for the product as well, isn't it? So
yeah, I think when they went IPO, I bought some Tesla stock, but sold it very quickly afterwards. I regret it to this day.
Yeah. And so how did this come about? Because you mentioned earlier that there are some product-led companies that don't realize they are, and there's some that think they are but they aren't. And I guess my first experience of what I would think is a product-led company was probably Apple when the iPhone came out. I remember I was playing golf with a mate, and I had I can't remember what they're called, some sort of just clunky thing, and I had to tap individual little buttons on a screen pad, and he got his iPhone out, and it was an absolute game changer, absolute game changer. And then everybody bought them. So how did it come about? Did someone think about it? I mean, was it again a gut feel that somebody kind of did, or did a bunch of scientists sit there and work this out? And
I think it's a bit of a misconception that this is a new thing, right? It's actually that philosophy has actually been around for ages. Let me think. If you think about IKEA is a great example of a product-led company, right? How it does its sales, how it does its service. So you walk into the store, all the pieces are actually there. You can experience it, you can feel it. There's returns policies like 300 a year, and you can actually experience the product and let it sell itself at a great price point that works. And and I mean, less said about the spaghetti and meatballs, to be fair, but I think IKEA is a great example. Ferrari is a great example. I mean, Ferrari's marketing budget is one line item, which is the Formula One team. That is you've never seen a Ferrari ad, have you? And that's all it is. And they showcase the Formula One team as a miracle of engineering, and that is the epitome of what car engineering should be. And that is exactly what sells the car. I mean, we actually have some clauses in a Ferrari contract that says if you make modifications to the car within 3 years, we have the right to take it back, right? And that's crazy. It's your car, right? But they use the product so much to leverage everything that they do. And that's also why you see some of these trends around Airbnb moving to kind of product marketing manager kind of style models, or as you mentioned, Apple style product managers. Like Scott Forstall was the guy who ran iOS. I actually met him a couple of times, and he was what they call the directly responsible individual. And when Apple Maps failed massively and people were running off a cliff and things like that, he got fired, right? Now, he's a brilliant guy, but just truly what product led and how the entire organization works around it is pretty impressive. Visionary leadership, market demands and tech innovation, and truly understanding tech, understanding customers, Amazon, Airbnb, Netflix, Spotify, Apple, Tesla, you can go on.
Indeed. And so how would you, I mean, I touched on the fact, we're looking at the product-led approach as to product-led growth. Where would you say the main differences are? And
I think actually you called it out quite nicely. You should be a product manager, Doug. As you said, PLA, the product-led approach is much more holistic and affects all areas of the business and customer acquisition, and CS, team alignment, so on. Product-led growth is kind of like a subset of that, which really focuses on kind of the customer acquisition, activation, retention, cross-sell side of things, the go-to-market side. And typical examples, as we kind of talked about, free trials, premium models, and encouraging users to expand and upgrade. It's primarily a tool for sales and marketing to kind of keep their customers growing. And I think some of the great examples, again, Slack, Zoom, Canva, Notion. Canva, great example, actually.
I mean, I do get it, but it's interesting the amount of confusion out there. And whilst, we're close to product, I hire product roles all day, when I was trying to research more about what an actual product-led approach is, all Google would do is just stick me into PLG like websites and talk about product-led growth. It would, I actually needed yours and Moise's help to actually get some decent collateral on the product-led approach. So I think there's quite a bit of confusion in the market out there about the two.
I agree. I mean, I'll give you an example of what we do at Dojo, right? We're primarily a payments company, but actually 40% of all lending applications come from our app, right? And we're just constantly refining, hey, you might be a great fit for, getting a loan from us, etc. So the sales and marketing people are not so much directly involved with the customers, but they're very directly involved with the product folks to actually build up those experiences. We even contemplated using some of our payments terminals to actually get end customers to download our consumer app, right? Imagine when you're tapping and paying for it and using that product as a mechanism by which you expand your customer segment.
Yeah, thank you. What about impact to businesses then? The product-led approach. Can you think about key impacts? Have you any examples there, and sort of adopting it, going from a normal company to actually having a product-led approach?
Sure. I mean, I think ultimately most companies want the same thing, right? They want to deliver exceptional value to their customers in a cost-effective way, right? That's by and large what every company is aspiring to do, and hence increase revenues and margins and things like that. But obviously, the biggest impact is the couple of impacts: one internal, some and some external. I think external ones are kind of the obvious ones, like higher revenues, higher customer growth. You create a superior product experiences, and they will come, and word of mouth models and things like that. The second element around kind of reducing costs, and again, kind of increasing that margin, costs can be in CAC, customer acquisition, training, commission, things like that, right? But it can be in the cost to serve of the next existing customer and your CS, etc. I think I've seen great companies. If your cost scales with your user growth, that becomes a challenge, right? You want your user growth to be exponential, and you want your cost to kind of keep flattening out, so your margin, your delta keeps increasing, and you increase your profitability, right?
Absolutely.
And greater retention is an important part of the picture. More products, more usage, etc. I think there's been quite a lot of conversation around MVP versus MLP, the minimum lovable product, right? At Dojo, I think our customers truly love us, and they give us a lot of feedback. I mean, we have an NPS of 70. That's insane. Like very few companies in the world have a 70 NPS. And because it's also a physical device that kind of actually goes into retail stores, and you can get an opportunity to interact with customers. And I can't tell you the number of free drinks I've got. It says, "Oh, you work for Dojo, come sit down, let's have a few drinks, and let me tell you, it's an amazing proposition, but here's what I think you could do this better." So I think that advocacy is amazing. I think the last kind of couple of things probably is obviously around the scalability and adaptability side of things, and a product-led approach, allows you to react to market changes much quicker, agile, all of that. And then the final thing I would say is it's probably the most undervalued, which is much more around internal collaboration. If we're all roughly swimming in the same direction, we're in a good place, right? So those kind of pieces of the puzzle, right, make a massive impact to whether your business succeeds or fails.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that, Amitabh. I think we are nearly out of time, so it's probably a good idea for me to bring Jen back into the chat. Thank you very much. It's really, really appreciated. That was really insightful. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Doug, and thanks, Amitabh. That was great. Loved that. So moving on to the next section now, we're going to be covering how to build and implement a product-led culture. And to set the scene, I'd really like to share a case study from Meta, which are known to have one of the best product cultures in the tech industry. The graphic on the screen that you can see now shows some of the key learnings from the case study, as well as best practices on how they've successfully actioned and implemented a product-led culture within their company. From these, I'd like to just pull out a couple that particularly stood out to me, and we've highlighted within the boxes on the graphic. So the first one was clearly defining products mission and vision. For us, a mission-driven organisation is critical to the buy-in for employees, and this is often something that's discussed when we speak to candidates. So being able to define the mission from the outset makes a big difference when engaging employees, and then combining this with a vision to allow the team to play a part in the future success of the product is key. And the second one that really stood out as well for me is product management, talent and career management. This one is also important as it allows product managers to show the impact of their role within the wider organisation, and clear metrics is the best way to do this. Generally speaking, all PMs want accountability to be able to achieve this, and to be able to demonstrate senior stakeholder management is all important when continuing to progress within your product career. So this brings me on nicely to introduce our next guest speaker for today, Anna. Anna is the CEO at Culture Trip with previous product management experience across the Guardian News and Media, Sky, BBC Store and Channel 4. Welcome, Anna. Thanks so much for joining us today. Please do introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about what compelled you to be part of this particular roundtable.
Hi, Jen, and hi, everyone who have joined the talk. Also, very well done to Amitabh and Doug. I really enjoyed the conversation, and it's always wonderful to be surrounded by people who are in product or who are interested in product. It's in my experience, such a incredible and supportive of a community and passionate for the discipline that is one of the reasons why, I would never say no to an invitation to talk anything product or to impart anything that I've experienced, the bad or the things that haven't worked out, and equally the things that have worked out. Because I think as a discipline, we are prone to learning and iterating, and every time there be opportunity to be able to share what we've done, I would always welcome and accept.
Amazing. Yeah, we're very lucky to have you all here today. But thanks so much for your time. So just sort of begin this section, it'd be great to get your thoughts on how to actually build a product-led culture. So you're able to sort of help kind of break that down for us a little bit. I sort of touched on about sort of defining the product's mission and vision from that example from Meta there. So are you able to sort of kind of kick off as to how you might go about that within your organisation, maybe sharing some previous examples?
Yes, of course. I think it's probably useful. Maybe I spend 30 seconds around my experience, because so you've said I've done various product roles for the last 15 years, mostly within media and mostly within kind of businesses that already had an existing business model, media business model that sort of were, as many other businesses, on a transformational path to become more product-led and to embrace all of the disruption that would come from the more advanced companies within the product space. And now I'm in a startup, which is very, very different to these other companies. I've also done a fair bit of academia. I've done a PhD in AI, so there's a research background. So it's kind of interesting to see, to your point, how does what does a product-led culture and how to go about it differ based on where you are as a company, based on the maturity of the company and understanding product, and equally, the pace and the goals for that company. Startups are always very fast-paced. They have very short period of time to define and product market fit for a specific area, and then obviously try and find support within the investment community to scale and grow. More older organizations obviously have different goals, which is how to protect the business from being vulnerable from competitions or from faster paced or more efficient ways of working. Mm-hmm. So I'll kind of split my answer into two, I guess. The first one is, when you are part of an established companies, and I've kind of been lucky enough to work for incredible companies that are very good at sort of looking at themselves and constantly wanting to improve, even though they've been around for a long time. So companies like The Guardian, the BBC, Channel 4, ITV, all within media, all with incredible scale and reach. And essentially the product-led, how you set up a product-led approach there is first as a product manager or as a product team, truly understand where the company is within kind of their product understanding, because I've seen examples where you would get absolutely brilliant, kind of perfectly set up product practices within organizations that are at odds with the organizational structures. And in that sense, if a product manager is the CEO for their own product, big part of any CEO's skill set is where do you fit in within your environment, and whether that's, if you're a CEO of a company, what that means for, in terms of the competition, in terms of the sort of market conditions, or the global events. On a product level, that would need to be your immediate environment within which you operate. And I really loved Amitabh's point around the empathy, towards users. But equally, I think within product there has to be empathetic approach towards the other parts of the organization. So within those companies, I think first and foremost there needs to be an understanding of kind of what are the what is the understanding of the product discipline, what is the level of maturity within the executive team and all the main shareholder groups. And then within that, also understanding what is, because if it's an established company, they would have already certain KPIs. How do you derive KPIs from those, from what already exists? Because the worst thing would be for, the product sort of led thinking to be at odds with something that is more traditional. For example, lots of companies would have revenue as a KPI, because that is the basic of sort of a successful company. You make more revenue than what you have cost, or you're funded, and that's how you're kind of guaranteeing that you can continue. Revenue is a very odd metric to put to a product team, because it has to be related to something that provides value for the users. So one thing in that sort of understanding of the context and the environment would be, how do you translate what revenue means? And that would kind of play very well to what Doug was saying. Revenue would mean less churn within your retention. Revenue would mean high acquisition, which is where your product growth comes in, right? So high acquisition means that you have a really good product market fit for your product. And that revenue might mean engagement, which means people using your product and actually appreciating it more, which then come with upgrades. So from at a high level, understanding what the company's KPI is for an established company, of course, but even for a startup as well, and then defining what that means for your specific area would be your kind of the mission for the specific team, I guess. It's a longer answer, I guess, but
it's fine. Yeah, making loads of notes. It's great. Just kind of wanting to dig a bit deeper. You mentioned about understanding kind of the company's kind of product and maturity. How would you go about assessing that in an organization? Where would you start?
Oh, I would start with the structure, right? So if a lot of the times when I've interviewed product people and interviewing, the first question some more enlightened, kind of more experienced product managers would ask, where does the team sit? And then I'm not saying there's right or wrong answer here, but there's an indication of kind of what the company thinks about the team based on where the reporting line is. Because essentially, if you do need to be product-led, there needs to be an understanding across the board, I guess, from the executive team and the wider team of that sort of soft influence, that sort of influence without authority, and understanding of that. And the structures will need to support that. So I think, product managers, if you can't sort of build consensus with various stakeholders without managing them, without the authority, then you won't last for 5 minutes, I think, in the current sort of setup. So that would be first indicator. The second one would be, obviously, if you're kind of looking at symptoms, the second one would be how does the company operate? What are the processes? And again, a lot of the conversations would be around, is data being used, and in what ways being used? What is the sort of development cycles of the company? So it's more around this, first the structure, then the setup and the processes. And then the third one would be essentially the type of kind of product setup in the company that exists. So there's a few sort of indications that would probably give you enough information to kind of understand where the company is, and in turn, in a sort of that empathetic way, as a product person, what do you need to do? Because, you know, I've seen some of the smartest product people would be, you know, and this is, I've been doing product for quite a long time, for 15 years now. And in the beginning, you would get sort of incredibly enthusiastic people trained in the Silicon Valley that come with the buzzwords and the acronyms and the, you know, this sort of data driven, be dropped into a company that's utterly unprepared to take any of that, you know, and if you don't understand it, then you're not going to adopt it. And so a lot of kind of effort would go in with not a lot of results. And I think that I'm seeing that changing over the last 5-6 years incredibly, and it's so brilliant to see. And I think that the whole industry, especially in the UK, is gaining more and more maturity, which is wonderful to see. And the emerging talent is absolutely fantastic. So there's a joy in kind of seeing how the industry is moving at such a fast pace.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, those 3 examples there, Anna, are amazing, and you know, really comprehensive summary. And you know, when we speak to product people, and they're asking, is this a product-centric organization? Is it a product-led business? I think those three points there are a really good starting point, you know, to really assessing kind of where that company is in terms of their journey with product. So kind of brings me on, I guess, the sort of stakeholder side to the next point about kind of gaining leadership buy-in. And what's really unique about you, Anna, is obviously sort of been sort of product CPO and obviously now in a CEO role. So I think our audience would be very interested to learn, you know, from a CEO's perspective, how product is often seen. And obviously you've been sort of both sides of the coin. So kind of, you know, talking through sort of both sides would be really, really interesting. And, you know, kind of examples of building a product-led culture as a CPO and also sort of, yeah, in your current role as well. Is that something you're able to touch on for us?
Yes, of course. I think so. Being a CEO is quite an eye-opening in many ways. The first one is there's so much admin, which you don't do as a chief product officer, which is lovely. I mean, you do admin, but this is kind of different type of admin. This is corporate corporate admin, which you know, it's interesting and probably not the most exciting of things that you do. It's really interesting when you are. I'm going to start with where I am now. When you're CEO of a startup, you know, you need to fundraise and everything, and you talk a lot with your financial director or chief finance officer, and they come with these huge spreadsheets, and you go, okay, what is the cost of specific departments, and what is the output of these departments? And I think it took a lot of hindsight to kind of look at and this is purely from a startup point of view, so don't get me wrong, to look at certain indulgence in the product teams, just testing or actually allowing for products that are underperforming to remain. When you look at these kind of big sheets and you go, well, this is the funding that we have, how are we going to use it? From a CEO's perspective, it's, you do need to be very cognizant of the intricacies and the time it takes for good products to emerge, and the failures that you will incur, to actually have sympathy for the costs and the time that it takes. And I think with that perception on, I think my conversation when I was a CPO or in a senior product role would have been slightly different, because there's slight indulgence, which if you're not aware of the context, it might come across as sort of not the most efficient way to go about things. So the first one, as to how you build buy-in, is not to be patronizing, because and not to kind of go, well, this is, of course, user needs are really, really important, to listen and to understand what the goals of the companies are, and to then articulate very clearly via the data, the process, and bringing everyone on a journey. How are you going to help that kind of happen? And there's always going to be a door open if that is the way to kind of go. as opposed to, just kind of going, well, this is how we're going to do things. We're going to validate certain things. It will take 6 months for us to come up with something. That is also fine, but it has to come from a point of, as a discipline, we need to be seen as super helpful because we are. And sometimes I think that sort of tends not to be the primary communication. I think the primary communication sometimes is just justifying your own existence, and I think that's kind of quite tricky.
Yeah, that's great. I think the communication piece is massive, and sort of run out of sort of time on this section in terms of covering that in a bit more depth. But being able to really empower and communicate across those cross-functional teams, and break down any silos across marketing or tech or whatever other discipline it may be, and just kind of being that helpful go-to as a product person, and approaching it in the right way in terms of the comms is obviously super important. So just kind of now moving on to the implementation part, just for the last few minutes, Anna. So, and you sort of touched on it about, sort of fail fast, learn fast. Are you able to sort of talk through, kind of following those 3 sort of steps as you sort of talk through earlier on, but, what is the best ways? People are kind of coming off this roundtable today thinking, right, all the things that have been spoken about, how do I actually go and implement this within my business? What are your key takeaways there?
I think it's down to basics. It's interesting, lots of things have changed within the product discipline, but it's down to basics. Keep obsessing about what the users want from your product, and deliver it really well for them. In an iterative way, but really well. I think that would then imply that there has to be a cross-functional alignment and collaboration, and most of it, if you are, again, if as a product person you're the CEO of your own product, being a CEO is very important to have as many voices as possible and as many people helping you to achieve your goal. So invite everybody that would be valuable to that product. A marketing person, a data person. We run trips at Culture Trip, and our customer services, people are there, and we have people who are creating the trips are in our discussions. And as an example, our director of curation for trips, somebody who actually goes and sources where our customers go in the sort of small group trips that we do that are kind to the planet. He's not that interested, or I'm saying he's not interested. In theory, he should not be that interested into how we do paid marketing, for example. But actually, he's invited in every paid marketing meeting where we go. We've done these, these ads. This is the click-through rate. This is kind of the return rate. And it's been incredible since he started coming. He's actually started thinking about the curation and commissioning of the product in a different way. And these 2 disciplines could not be kind of further apart with what you do. It's almost like, the equivalent would be you work as a TV commissioner, and you commission, a great series for your kind of streaming service or TV. And then you're in every meeting with the marketing team as to how that's going to get, placed. And we're finding these nuggets, apart from the obvious collaboration sort of matrices that need to exist. I think the kind of further out you go, there's more and more really interesting insight internally that complements the ones from the users as well.
That is absolutely fascinating, and thanks for sharing that example. How about obviously with a large organisation, you'll have sort of bigger cross-functional teams to be able to pull in sort of that expertise, and as you mentioned just there, and how that kind of came together. If you were sort of a small startup though, and you're really super lean, how might you go about sort of implementing it? Going back to basics, obsessing over the user. I think from what Amitabh was saying as well, always having the customer at the heart of every decision. But yeah, if you were sort of a smaller team and didn't have that resource, how might you kind of approach?
Well, we are in that situation now. We're very small and very lean, and it's fascinating. It's probably the thing that I've enjoyed most. We're about 20 people, and it's kind of incredible collaboration. So we don't have, for example, certain disciplines which we would like to have. We don't have, for example, UX researchers. we sort of do various surveys on the site. Our product people are doing various surveys on the site. We tend to upskill to a certain level across the board, because that's what you need to do in a small startup. And the secret there is to hire the type of people who are entrepreneurial and who are insatiable in their curiosity. And I'm finding, so the person who I've mentioned, who has traveled to 180 countries and knows the world inside and out and can curate an amazing trip, he's actually offered to analyze the results of a survey that we ran on the site, and came back with demographics and, this is what we're finding, and these are the little snippets of the things that we're not doing very well. So that sort of cross-pollination is really important when you come to a small startup, but it has to have the right sort of type of people in the workforce. The other one is we do use people from outside, freelancers, and they are absolutely brilliant in, again, kind of relentlessly communicating with clarity as to where we want to be. They become part of the team, they help us out, and they move on. So as long as kind of the communication is there, you can upskill your kind of team, and also look for help from outside as well. And the combination of those two work really well, and it's cost effective.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, the entrepreneurial mindset piece in terms of hiring, when we're working with startups is something that's super important, and often is a kind of requirement from clients, and sort of demonstrated as to why that is, Anna. So I wish we didn't have to wrap up. I feel like we could talk all day, but sadly it's time to now move on to the next section. But yeah, thanks a lot, Anna. Really enjoyed that. We'll passing over back to Doug now. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Anna. That was both really good. Really good. So for the last section, Moises and I will be talking about the challenges and strategies of a product-led approach. As we've covered, in a product-led company, you tend to narrow down onto a set of problems that a particular type of customer is having. And if this problem's painful enough, the target customer will pay money to solve it, and that solution can then be sold to many other customers, or that's the theory anyway. Now, this could be an established problem the businesses or consumers have, like the need for a single view of a customer, or an estate or IT estate or portfolio. Or it could even be a problem that no one knew we needed to solve until somebody did it, like the iPhone or even the wheel. This is known as product market fit, the product actually having the market to go to. And we're going to bring on a graphic in a moment, which really demonstrates without product market fit, the organization will fail. Now, this gentleman, for those of us that were around in the 80s, is called Clive Sinclair. And in the 80s, Clive invented the ZX80, which was one of the first mass personal computers, and it was an absolute game changer. And shortly afterwards, Clive then invented the first smart car, and he was 20 years before the market was ready, and sadly went bust, which really just demonstrated that things are sometimes a little out of our control, and great ideas are dependent upon timing. And if the timing isn't right, the market isn't right, that's absolutely an issue. I'd like now to introduce Moises Garcia. Moises is previously the CPO of CarWow. Hi, Moises. Would you like to perhaps give yourself a quick introduction?
Yeah. Hi, Doug. Hi, everyone. For sure. I'm Moises. Like a lot of people in the product space, my journey to product has been a bit non-linear. My background is in finance. I did a lot of merger and acquisition, and then management consulting at BCG. And I started working at CarWow first as a GM before moving into product as a then chief product officer. I was responsible for product management, design, analytics, working with or amazing CTO or product or solving customer problems, delivering business outcomes for the business. I think from a personal perspective, I think something interesting though is like I've never been an IC PM. That's drive still a bit of imposter syndrome. But I spent quite a lot of time as a product leader, not that much as an IC.
Okay. Well, I think what we wanted to talk about was the challenges in transitioning to the product-led approach. And, CarWow were known as having great products. So, yeah, are you able to sort of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I think the first thing I would say, and this might be a bit controversial considering the name of the roundabout, the conversation. I don't actually love the product-led brand, and I don't think that it helps a lot of the product people. I think it creates confusion with product-led growth, and it creates like, okay, if it's not product-led, what is it? Is it design-led, marketing-led? While we should be thinking more about being customer-centric and how you apply certain techniques, certain way of thinking to solve customer problems, delivering great products that solve customer needs and delivering outcomes for the business. So that's one. I think in terms of the challenges, I would say that it depends. Like every important question, it depends a lot. And in my mind, it depends on two things. The first one is, what's the level of maturity of the organization? And then I was talking about that in terms of what's the gap between where you are and where you want to be as a product organization, as a company, and the way that you operate. And the second thing is, what's the level of leadership buy-in? How much buy-in do you have from the CEO and the rest of the C-suite? And that creates different segments. Like, as I said, a former management consultant, so I love 2x2s and structured thinking. But if you think about these 2x2, you have these people, you have these segments where actually the gap versus what you want to be is not that big. And then you have really good buy-in. That's a great place to be. And then it's about iterating, knowing, like making every day better. I think probably the most challenging is when the gap is big, right? Like you are farther away from what you want to do. And these probably feel like there's not a lot of conversation with customers. You just get certain parts of the organization, like the sales team sending features and the engineers build it, something like that. And I think then it depends on a lot on which part, what's the level of buy-in that you have in the organization. So if you have relatively small buy-in, it's very difficult and challenging place to be. And my suggestions are probably two. The first one is, don't talk about product-led approach. Just show it. Find what are the pockets of value, what are the product team that have the right skills, the right setup, that can collaborate with the right stakeholders that are open-minded, and actually be successful, show the outcome, and build case studies so you are building trust. The other part is when actually the CEO wants to do it, and it's just that the gap is really big. And then a lot is about, in my mind, about the fundamentals of product management. It's about thinking, what are the challenges, and diagnosing what are the problems, prioritizing, and then coming with solutions. And we can talk a lot more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen your graphic here, and I think you made a point of, if there's a really low level of CEO buy-in, is it worth it? And, you know, touching on, you know, a lot of the time we get people coming to us looking for a new career is there's just a lack of CEO buy-in. It might be a startup or scale up, and it's a CEO who ideated the first iteration and either can't let go, or their ego's too involved in it, or whatever. So yeah, that's a pretty big one. That's a pretty big one. What about things like resistance to change in the organization? Is that something that can be overcome, do you think, or?
Yeah, for sure. I think that everything can be overcome. And I think this is the kind when you need to apply the same way you think about problems, the same way you think about products, and the way you think in terms of problems from your organization. So in my mind, it would be, okay, why there is a resistance to change? And that's why you actually need to talk to the stakeholders. You need to talk to the CEO. You need to talk to the CRO, with the VP of sales, with the sales team, with the account management, and try to understand what is driving that. What are the really root causes that create that resistance to change? And when you might realize, like when you have that kind of conversation, certain trends, certain patterns come up. It might be that they don't have, because of legacy issues, there's no trust in the product organization.
Yeah.
Or they don't feel that there's alignment in terms of objectives.
Yeah.
So you have to go deeper into understanding what are the root cause. And then once you get at that point, understanding if it's an optics, a communication issue, or a reality issue.
Yeah.
Once you are at this point, coming out with solution is quite straightforward.
Yeah. Okay. So you think it's about identification. So how would you, I mean, low trust in a product organization could be down to people feeling, from other departments feeling threatened, or it could be, a legacy issue you've inherited. Are there quick fixes to that in your experience to build trust in the capability? Because if there's no trust in the product organization, you can't be a product-led company, can you? So
yeah, I think trust is like a very expensive currency, and it is very difficult to gain and very easy to lose.
Easily spent,
it's something that you gain. It's something you gain day by day. But I think that you have to go a step deeper. It's like, okay, why there is not that trust? And it might come out things like, oh, we don't think that product managers and product designers and engineers really understand customers. Or they care about experience, but they don't care about revenue. And once you get to that level, you identify what are the beliefs that the organization have. You can understand what I mentioned before. Is it true, or is it a communication issue? Or what part is communication? And it might be both, right? It might be that product managers and product designers have the right customer. They could do more. They could talk to more. They could talk to more customers. They could attend win-loss sessions. They could do more user testing too. But also, it can be that they are not communicating. We, as a product managers, product designers, we are not communicating that insights to the rest of the organization. So they don't know what we know.
I'm with you.
And I think both are really important.
So how would you, are there sort of common, I mean, because you've got quite a good consulting background as well, are there common strategies to overcome these sorts of challenges? I mean, I can recap on the challenges: resistance to change, low trust, poor leadership, from a hereditary point of view, or a lack of resources. Are there common strategies if faced with these that you would look to think, okay, this is how I'm going to tackle all this?
Yeah, in general, I'm not a big fan of just like, okay, you do these three things, because it's very contextual to the organization, right? Like you'll have different kind of C-level with different experience, different level of talent. So I think it's what you have to apply first principles. You have to understand what's the context of the organization and what are the problems, because then you can understand much better the solution. So if you think about, okay, we don't have the right people, we don't have the right infrastructure, you can actually think, okay, what kind of people are we missing? And is it that we are missing the right talent, or that they don't have the right strategic context, that they don't have clarity on the objectives? And then it might be that you actually are not hiring enough designers, but you have enough product managers. So you have to have that balance of right talents. So you have, in general, you have to go deeper. You have to apply product thinking and first principles to understand what is really happening and how to drive change. I think like one thing that will apply all over the place could be about empathy. And I think Anna mentioned it before. It's about you need to have empathy to customers and any constituency in your marketplace, but also empathy to the account managers, the salespeople. Try to understand what they are driving their objective, what they are suffering in the day-to-day, because people normally do it in good faith. So you need to have empathy for what they are and try to bring them in the process.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think people working in good faith, people are rarely destructive. They want to do the right thing. They want to go to work. They want to make an impact, don't they? So I'm interested in you saying, sort of approaching the organization with product thinking. So you'd actually think, okay, this organization is a product. It's kind of not working. how would you, let's think of it like a product. How would you go about that then? Would you look at, I don't know, diagnostics at all, or what?
Yeah,
How?
I will apply product thinking annoyingly in every part of my life, and that's but and my girlfriend suffers from that, right? But you apply the same. Sorry.
Recruitment's the same.
Yeah, you apply in the same techniques, right? You try to understand what the problems are. And there are different ways. You do external diagnostic, internal diagnostic. You talk to people. You actually listen. And once you have that, you identify what are the big issues. You prioritize those issues. Once you have that, you come up with what is the best solution. You bring the right people in order to make that decision. So then you actually identify that what are the 3 things that are broken and what are the root causes and how you change it.
Okay.
So I think that you can apply this product thing, like as a CPO, I would encourage, as a product leader, you should think about your product organization as your product. As a CEO, you should think about your company as your product.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see the parallels are good. Is there an example then? I don't know, say of a product leader looking to do this. Are there some examples you could sort of talk through as to what the sort of questions they should ask themselves and how? And
in which sense?
Well, if you're a product leader doing this process, a lot of the product process works. What questions would you sort of ask internally or ask yourself to sort of identify what the issues are, what the main problems are, how to go about getting a fix? I'm trying to think about the framework you've got is really good. I'm trying to think about an actual example of how this would work, though.
Yeah, I would say that you talk to people. Like, let's imagine that you have this situation where actually a lot of the product roadmap, you're a new product leader joining a company, a lot of the product roadmap is defined by sales defining features.
Yeah.
So I think that the first starting point would be, okay, have a conversation, talk to the CRO, talk to the CEO, talk to the head sales, and ask them, what do you care about? What's the context? How do you see the market? How do you see the product? What are the metrics that you care about? How do you think that product is doing? What do you think that they can do better? If you do that, you definitely identifying patterns. And like, I think a common pattern sometimes on that problem could be people do not know that there is a product strategy. Most of the time, there is a product strategy, just that it might be good or bad, or it might be well communicated, written and well communicated, or it might not be. But once you have that understanding, you can say, okay, the problem is that actually we don't have a product strategy. So good starting point, come up with a product strategy, bring your stakeholders to help you define that so they are part of the process. You have a product strategy, you think it's a great product strategy, then communicate it, start over the process again, bringing in the stakeholders, communicate clearly and consistently what are you trying to achieve and what are the product themes and what is happening now, what is happening next, what is happening in future.
Okay. So really, you're just saying you treat all your peers and departments as if they're customers and do some user research, really.
Exactly.
That sounds great. I think we are kind of coming to the close of things now as well. So thank you so much for your time and insight, Moises. That's been really, really good, really, really helpful as well.
Thanks for inviting me.
No, not at all. It's been fantastic to hear. Thank you. And I can see Jen waiting in the wings. So Jen, if we could perhaps bring you in to round things off, and Moises and everybody else, and Amisab, thank you again, and thanks to all the watchers as well.
Thanks, Doug, and thanks, Moises. Super end to the discussions there, and summarise things nicely with some really interesting examples as well. Just thanks everyone for listening today. It was great to hear from Abitav on helping us through understand more about the product-led approach, and then moving on to Anna, who took us through how to build and implement this within your own organisation. And to conclude just then, some challenges and strategies presented by Moises. So thank you all to wonderful guest speakers today, and to Doug for co-hosting this with me. You can watch this roundtable back on our website, and we're of course here to help support with any product hiring, or if you're looking for a new role, please get in touch. And yeah, we look forward to the next roundtable already. Thanks all.